Hey you guys, it's Watcher Ralph, and I'm here with my sister Christabel, and you're watching episode 3 of Not Till the Credits End, the podcast. Now, today is a special event. We're skipping over breaking news because breaking news is the Oscars is coming up soon. And we decided to cover that. Now, in our next segment, we'll be going into Christopher Nolan. And it's not that we're biased, believing Christopher Nolan's going to win everything, but we believe that he deserves to be nominated for most of the things. So we'll get into that soon, and we'll have an additional guest for that. But for now, let's just go straight into the Academy Awards. First up, we're going to talk Best Picture. We're going straight to it.
Yes.
And of course, there's plenty this year. There's 9 in total.
Yes.
And the list starting, we'll just say because of Christopher Nolan, Dunkirk, Shape of Water, Get Out, Lady Bird,
Call Me By Your Name, 3 Billboards, and Phantom Thread. Oh, and The Post. Sorry, The Post. But you're forgotten for a reason.
Yes, exactly. And then, so right now we're just going to go into what we assume is going to win and who we want to win. Okay? So you can go first.
Yes. So I know that the big front runner right now for the Academy Awards is The Shape of Water. It's kind of neck to neck with 3 Billboards. 3 Billboards has won the Golden Globes and the SAG Award for this year. So that's why it's one of the top contenders. But from what the little birdies are saying, it seems like The Shape of Water is going to be the one that takes the award. Now, for me personally, both of those films would be included in my top 5 of the 9 nominees. However, if I had to pick my Best Picture, it would be between Call Me By Your Name and Dunkirk.
Okay, Call Me By Your Name and Dunkirk. To me, it definitely goes for either Call Me By Your Name or 3 Billboards. Now, they're both incredible, like we've talked about. To me, they both are gripping emotionally and they hit the right tone. Unlike something like The Post, to me, 3 Billboards keeps it light because of the hope, even though it still goes deep and gritty into the subject matter. I mean, if you know the premise, clearly it's about a mother who's lost a daughter due to murder and rape. I mean, that's the way the movie starts.
Doesn't get more dark
exactly,
than that.
Exactly. And yet it still maintains this hopeful tone throughout. And to me, that's where one of the reasons why I consider it up there, because it has this beautiful blend.
For me, Call Me By Your Name is quite possibly my favorite film from 2017 and has honestly been added to my top favorite films of all time. You know, this is a picture that for me has every component that you look for in a top-notch film. You know, acting is phenomenal across the board. Particularly, we have to call out Timothy, who is nominated for Best Actor in the Oscars. Now, I do personally feel that Michael Stuhlbarg was snubbed in this film. You know, this is quite possibly one of his best performances that I've yet to see. And even Armie Hammer, who isn't recognized enough as a serious actor, I think this is his best performance to date as well. Yeah. And that's not even including the supporting cast. Beyond just acting, filming-wise, this is beautifully directed and the cinematography is top notch. You know, I really feel like it brings you to that location, to that time, and keeps you there throughout. Yes.
Year I was born.
And then beyond even that, you know, the scoring, the writing, everything is great. So that's why that's really at the top for me right now.
And when you're talking about Michael, I mean, at the end of the day, he came through with a beautiful performance where he got snubbed as well, Shape of Water. And I do believe he deserved it more, of course, for Call Me By Your Name, but this has been his year, I'll just say that. And it's sad to see that it's not going to be showcased within the Academy Awards, you know?
Yeah.
And so then, I mean, one thing I would want to also say is, one I wouldn't mind, I would definitely hope to win, even though I don't believe it is. I would say Get Out, just being in this category, deserves, because it's one of the greatest films I've seen, especially for that genre. I mean, for it to be Jordan Peele's first movie, we could talk about directorial debuts, if you know what I'm talking about. But for it to be his first movie, that's one that people should definitely be looking at. And he even said it, he's like, it's unfortunate he decided to make this his first movie because it's only downhill from here, you know?
No, yeah, Peele has definitely set a bar for himself in terms of, really bringing it 110% to just his ability as a writer and as a director. Now, do I feel that way about another big film that's been nominated? No, that film being Lady Bird. All I have to say is, apparently I didn't drink the Kool-Aid that was offered to everyone else. Because for me, this is an average film at best. I don't think that this is something that should have even been nominated for the Academy Awards in any of its categories. However, it's currently rated 99% on Rotten Tomatoes, and across the board, critics are praising it. It did win Best Actress in the Golden Globes for Saoirse Ronan. Greta Gerwig is being hailed as the best new director of her time. When I watch the film, like I said, it just feels average to me. The performances feel somewhat forced. The writing is okay. I think this film would have worked better maybe 10, 15 years ago, circa Juno release. And Greta Gerwig is a pretty average director, in my opinion. There was nothing groundbreaking in her filmmaking. And if it had not been for all the praise it's been receiving, this would have been a film that, just would have been added to my list of things watched, but not really that stands out.
That stands out, exactly. But talking about her as a director and Jordan Peele, let's go straight into Best Director of the Year.
Oh, yes. We've got, pretty good nominees here. Christopher Nolan receiving his first Academy Award nomination for Best Director.
Which you're going to hear us gush over him later on.
Soon to be, yes.
Exactly.
I think, long overdue. Unfortunately, giving all my love for Dunkirk, which you will be hearing in the second portion of our podcast, that is not my pick for Best Director. My pick will actually go to Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water.
Say it again. Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
At the end, trust me, I'm on the same page as you. Especially, I do believe this is his best American work as well. And he's smart that, again, his foreign films, when it comes to Pan's Labyrinth and Devil's Backbone, his dialogue is beautiful. It's incredible. But unfortunately, I feel like it doesn't translate as well in English when he writes. So that's why I even give it to him in this movie, because guess what? Both of the stars don't speak. I mean, the girl is a mute, and obviously her love interest is a fish.
Yeah. Fishman god.
But definitely when it comes to directing, he deserved it for this. Yes. I mean, it's beautiful in every sense of the word.
Del Toro is a true visionary. He puts all of his heart in all of his films. That's something that you can see within, any interview when he's discussing his previous films. But this one in particular has been something that he's really poured his heart into. And you can see that in the world that he creates. His direction is amazing. Cinematography is also nominated for this film, but I think when it comes to that debate of what is it that's really bringing the film full together, it's that vision that he creates as a director. Exactly. And that's why I think that he is more than deserving. Also nominated in it is Paul Thomas Anderson for Phantom Thread, which I believe he is a fantastic director, and whenever he collaborates with our good old Daniel Day-Lewis, they make beautiful work together. But I just don't think that he hits the mark this year for within that category.
Very true. So yeah, we both agree Guillermo del Toro definitely deserves to win this year, and it's not just because of previous work and they should give it to him. No, this movie embodies his work in all his strengths. He focuses on his strengths, and it showed. And then so we both hope and we both assume that
he is front runner for best directing right now.
So let's just jump right into Best Supporting Actress of this year.
So for the Best Supporting Actress role, it's actually close call right now for Allison Janney for her performance in I, Tonya, or Laurie Metcalf in Lady Bird. I think it's going to go to Allison Janney. She is the more out there performance within the category, and I think she is very deserving of the role. You are completely, you forget that you're watching Allison Janney. She has a lot of range as an actress, and when you're watching her in this film, quite frankly, you hate her, and you're supposed to hate her. And her performance makes it easier for you to empathize with Tanya, who is a very controversial figure to begin with. But when you're seeing the other individuals within her life,
within her life, you understand how she turned out the way she did.
Yes.
And one thing I'll say is that she has range, but to be honest, she's played this type of character before.
Yes.
And it is her strongest character. Like, she knows she has range, but this one, she brings her A game because, of course, she knows how to be the character you dislike in a lot of things, even in the show Mom. I mean, mom that comes off, she's the mom there. So at the end of the day, she has played the mom in a lot of shows and movies. But at the end of the day, here it focused on, again, her strengths. And without a doubt, I agree that I believe she should win, and I assume that she's going to win.
Yes, I will give a quick shout out to the nominee for Phantom Thread. I have not seen her in any previous works. I'd have to check her filmography to see, you know, if there is anything else I would recognize her in. But she really holds her own with Daniel Day-Lewis. But that's what really makes her stand out for me.
You're literally dealing with like probably one of the greatest actors of our time.
Yes.
No, and unfortunately, he's retiring after this movie. So of course, she knew she had to bring it too. If that's the case, everybody's going to refer to this movie when it comes to his career.
And he is nominated for lead actor within his category. You know, like Ralphie just said, this is his final film, so you would want him to go off with a nice little golden man in her. But I do not think that he is deserving, particularly compared to the other nominees.
If he wins, it would be based on that fact.
Yes.
So let's go into Best Supporting Actor.
So we're looking at Sam Rockwell for 3 Billboards. He is right now the front runner, followed by Willem Dafoe for the Florida Project. And then we do have Woody Harrelson also for 3 Billboards. Christopher Plummer for All the Money in the World. That, for anyone who's not aware, he took over.
Of course, for Kevin Spacey. Yes. They literally did reshoots a month before the movie came out to basically replace him, which, you know, if you know that situation.
And lastly, Richard Jenkins for The Shape of Water.
Yes, for Shape of Water, which his performance was beautiful too. But I would personally say Sam Rockwell is taking it.
Yes.
Now, I wouldn't mind a few others winning, but to me, he deserves it. Now, when you really think of his career, I personally think he deserves it in almost every movie he's ever done. Like, he steals the show, almost guaranteed. And in most cases, he plays characters that are meant to be dislikable, but you find a way to like them.
Yes.
I mean, that's the beauty within that's the beauty within his performance.
Yes, he manages to have true charm in all of his roles. You know, this is a character that you're supposed to hate.
Guaranteed.
You know, there doesn't really seem to be anything redeeming about him. And I think that's where we have to give some credit to Woody Harrelson's character, because really that's what helps bring that turn and that change within his role. So no disrespect to Woody Harrelson, who's also nominated, but really it's Sam Rockwell that just takes full charge in his performance.
I love Woody Harrelson's somber tone and performance, because I won't give it away, but what he's dealing with in the movie, for me, was unexpected, and I liked his relationship, the bond that he creates with Frances McDormand, even though she's basically, you know, calling him out. But
literally.
Literally, and yet they find a way to have a nice little bond between the two of them. So I'll give them that. So now let's go right into the meat of it, and let's talk about Best Actress of the Year.
All right, now here's another category where we have some stupendous performances. As I mentioned before, Saoirse Ronan is nominated for Lady Bird. I love Saoirse Ronan, you know, great in Brooklyn, great in Atonement, for which both she was nominated for, but this just isn't the role that I feel she deserves to be nominated for. So I don't really even give her much credit here. Now, Margot Robbie is nominated for I, Tonya. Amazing performance. You know, an issue that I've had with Margot in the past is that her Australian accent tends to come out when she's doing different accents, even when we're looking at Wolf of Wall Street.
Is the Brooklyn.
But here, you know, she completely delivers as Tonya Harding. You could put side by side her interviews with the actual Tonya Harding, and you believe it 110%. However, it doesn't seem like it's going to go to her.
No.
It all comes down to Frances McDormand for 3 Billboards.
3 Billboards.
That is also the best performance I've seen come from her in a long time. And this is talking about an actress that delivers in all of her roles. I don't want to discredit Meryl Streep, who's nominated for The Post, but I think it's just, you know, how can you not nominate Meryl Streep? But it's just an average performance coming from her from an average movie.
No, I like this exactly, because to me, that ultimately the problem with that movie, like I've said, if you watch my spoiler-free review, I mentioned that the tone is the problem when it comes to The Post. It kind of limited Meryl Streep's performance, because 3 Billboards and The Post both deal with deep subject matter, and they both tried to maintain a light tone to a degree, and yet I didn't find the balance in The Post like I did in 3 Billboards. And to me, it kind of took away from their performances.
I agree 110%. So would you agree that it should go to Frances?
Yeah, I want it to go to Frances, and I believe it's going to go to Frances, but I wouldn't mind if Margot Robbie wins it either. So now let's just jump right into Best Actor of the Year.
The controversial category.
Well, exactly. Now we'll have a little bit of debate, which we've had in the past about this category in particular.
I'll start off with just quickly saying I don't think Denzel Washington should have been nominated. I honestly think that James Franco was snubbed in this category. That should have gone to James Franco. And I freaking love Denzel Washington.
Me too, of course.
But this film is below average to me, and it feels like he's honing it in some parts. Like he's just, hey, I'm Denzel, so I gotta give you a great performance, but really doesn't.
Yeah, it felt like to me as though that they gave him a nomination mainly because it was the first dramatic performance he's done in a while.
Yes.
Like he's been going into the action, going into every other genre, and now he stepped foot right back into drama, and I felt like they kind of gave it to him just for that fact. You know?
I already kind of touched on my feelings with Daniel Day-Lewis. I don't think it should go to him here. Gotta shout out Daniel Kaluuya because this was a beautiful performance, and man has a flawless American accent. Because when you hear him really speaking, you know, he's got that
we've seen a lot of British shows back in the
East
days.
London accent. So I want to give him credit where credit is due, but I don't think he's even, you know, near front runner for this.
No.
So what it really comes down to
is Gary Oldman
and Timothée Chalamet.
And we said it like that specifically because I believe that Gary Oldman is deserving of the Academy Award, and she believes
that Timothée Chalamet is. I'm also a huge fan of Gary Oldman. Every performance that I've ever seen him in, even down to Hannibal, where he has a very small role that most people don't recognize him in, he completely transforms himself into the character he's playing.
Look at this white boy. Look at this white boy. I mean, that's a true romance reference if anybody knows it.
Dreads and all.
Exactly.
But here sometimes, and this is more to my feeling of the film itself, it just feels like he is playing this character and it doesn't feel like a person. It feels like a character.
Gotcha.
Whereas with Timothée Chalamet's performance, I'm completely transported. You know, I believe every single thing that he is portraying, and it's more the subtlety in his performance. You see these gestures that show the vulnerability in him, the confidence in him doing his little dance moves, and of course, not to spoil for anyone, but that ending scene, this is quite frankly one of the best acting performances I've seen of all time.
And the music that goes with it, it all blends, it intertwines to make it probably one of the greatest endings.
And it is an original song made for the film. So that's really what gives it to me for him. You know, everybody's loving on him right now, but apart from winning the Spirit Award, it's been going to Gary Oldman. So it seems likely that it will go to Gary Oldman.
Now I understand and I agree to a degree of what you're saying, because I do believe that Timothy gave this genuine performance. And as much as you're saying with Gary, but I feel like that's wherein lies the strengths and weaknesses of the films themselves, because Timothy is creating a new character. So there is no limit to what he needs to do.
Well, it's an adapted screenplay.
Very true, an adapted screenplay, but it's still based on, meaning like someone like Winston Churchill, there's evidence, we could go back to footage, plenty of it, just to be a reference. So of course, to a degree, he needs to be playing towards something. It does limit what he can do because he's trying to obviously be someone that existed in life. And to me, obviously, that I agree in that sense that it takes away, but I acknowledge how much he is embodying William Churchill as well, and that's why I love the fact.
Winston.
Sorry, and especially that he embodies Winston Churchill. I mean, you have to acknowledge that fact.
I think this goes into the big debate of actors being nominated for biopic roles, where, you know, I look at it the other way around, that he has all this material to work with. So if you're already a professional actor and you have that skill, it's easier to fall into that skin because you have all this time for prep work. You know, if we're looking at someone like Daniel Day-Lewis, who played Lincoln and who is a method actor, completely, you know, jumps headfirst into that role, you will have something to build from. Whereas when you only have something that's written word, this novel for Call Me By Your Name, that's then adapted for this film, you know,
you have to bring it to life.
Yes, and he truly brings it to life. I know we can go back and forth, and I know that I love Gary Oldman's performance and you love Timothy's, but at the end of the day, I do feel it should go to Timothy, but it seems likely it'll go to Gary.
One thing I'll say is that I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, putting in that view, you have to acknowledge that because it's a character that's known, I feel like the scrutiny from people's response will be more because they have a point of reference to be like, oh, is he really creating it as genuine as the person that lived? Because you have to bring someone that is gone to life. You have to embody that role perfectly. So I understand completely what you're saying, but that's kind of the only rationale that I have for why I believe Gary, my boy Gary deserves to.
All right, we can go in circles for this forever.
Exactly, trust me. As you saw, we kind of did. We kind of rotated like 3 times because we have debated this for a while. And of course, you could see further debate of that on some of my reviews that we'll cover, especially because the Academy Awards are coming up. But for now, that's the end of this segment. And now we're about to go straight into Christopher Nolan, diving deep into everything Nolan.
Yes.
All right. I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast so far. But since tonight is the
Oscars, the Oscars,
I wanted to showcase as many reviews for you guys based on the movies. So go check that out. And a few of them have her as a guest as well. So you get to see our perspective on most of the movies that are nominated. So now back to the show. And we're back. And now we're about to talk about something that we all wanted to talk about, one of our favorite directors, Christopher Nolan. Now, as you know, he's been nominated for Best Director, and the movie Dunkirk was nominated for 8 Academy Awards. Repeat, 8 Academy Awards. So we're excited to cover all of his movies right here because we believe that he deserves the recognition. Now, at the end of the day, I would prefer to start it off, of course, with Dunkirk, since it is the main film. What would you want to say about Dunkirk? What would you say, especially that you are a person that really, she enjoyed it more than anyone here?
I think Christopher Nolan was long overdue for an Academy Award nomination. However, that being said, this is the film that he deserves that nomination for.
Okay.
By far, his best directing work. And I was a little bit hesitant now that he's working with a different cinematographer, but he's running a tight ship with this film in terms of very little dialogue, but really when we're looking at it visually and along with Hans Zimmer's score, it really bangs that punch that it needs in order to get across to the audience. It's very cohesive throughout the entire, I think, 2.5-hour film, and very emotionally heart-wrenching for those viewers that are watching it.
Okay. Now, what would you say about, well, let's say, what would you think about a war movie like Dunkirk?
I'm saying, like, I mean, like, I'm not like a war movie person.
Okay.
So it's not like my genre like that. But, you know, cinematically, I know Nolan always delivers. You know what I'm saying? He always delivers. And regardless of how much I'm not into that type of flick, it still brings that, like, you know what I'm saying? You feel it.
Yeah.
You feel it.
It's visceral, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, which DP do you prefer? His newer DP or his original DP from all his previous films?
I'm a really big fan of Wally Fleister, which is his previous DP. You know, they actually parted ways because he wanted to move into directing himself.
Which we know that was a huge mistake.
Boo.
Yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
With Johnny Depp, of course. It's not even worth bringing up the name. It's not even worth talking about.
Lawnmower Man Part?
Yeah, Lawnmower Man Part 2, exactly. Exactly.
I said Part 3 because I think there was a Part 2.
Yeah, it was a Part 2. Yeah, I think even a Part 3, so then this might be Part 4, but hey. Yeah. So, out of all of his films, you think that this one really deserved the Academy out of every single one you could imagine?
Oh, no, I think numerous of Nolan's films, yes, deserve that award. But unfortunately, the Academy Awards is well known for snubbing somebody one time and then giving them that nomination and even the win to make up for it for the wrong
picture.
Yes.
Trust me, that's happened plenty of times. Leo and Martin, Scorsese, the list goes on.
Yeah.
But Denzel Washington, of course. It's an endless list, and that's specifically why I was asking, because I personally think this is a beautiful film. But to me, let's put it like this: the question I want to ask is, what do you think is his worst film? Because to me, honestly, before even starting this, I was thinking, what is his best? And to me, that's like, we would have to sit here and break our heads. So to me, it's easier to break down, what do you believe is his worst film?
His worst film. I think if we go through the list of you know, his motion pictures. Unfortunately, Insomnia doesn't hit the mark compared to his other films.
Yes.
And I think a big part of that is, you know, he's using a different composer, a composer that he worked with on his earlier films. But once he started collaborating with Hans Zimmer, you know, that score makes all the difference in bringing a picture together. That's one piece of it. Obviously, we can't say anything bad about the cast itself because the cast is phenomenal in that movie.
Insomnia, of course.
Yes.
Al Pacino. Yeah, Robin Williams, one of my favorite actors of all time. So, no, I completely agree. And to me, I love when he collaborates with two people, just like you said, Hans Zimmer being one of them, and then his brother, Jonathan Nolan. As you can see, these are my siblings right here, and we work well together, just like he does with his brother. And to me, unfortunately, it seems like Jonathan Nolan has gone to do bigger and better things with Westworld and even Persons of Interest, where that story basically was developed from Dark Knight. But to me, I hope that those three always work together because, like you said, he had to switch to DP. So I thought that was the perfect four-man team, but I like the fact that they have the three. Now, for you, what would you say?
His whole like repertoire is like it's insane to be like, oh, what was his worst movie?
Okay, got you. Okay,
At the
now I
end
feel
of
you.
the day, you know?
Well, like I said, I want to go through the list more than anything. So to me, the next movie I'll talk about is Memento. Now, Memento is one of those classics that, of course, Guy Pearce, that's really what propelled his career to me, in my eyes at least, and definitely Christopher Nolan. Most people, that was more of a pulp classic at the time, but to me, it was proven that it's one of the greatest because it's definitely one of the best formulas of storytelling that I personally ever seen. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what you think of ultimately Memento more than any other film.
I think Memento is pretty high up there on the list, particularly because now, in the past 10 years, Nolan's become very well known for, you know, big budget films. And here we're looking at Memento, like you said, it's this cult classic, obviously much smaller budget, probably didn't take that long to film, comparatively speaking, with some of his other productions, yet it still has that Nolan signature.
Conceptually speaking, it's one of the deepest stuff.
Yes. And it proves that, you know, even if it's big picture or small picture, he still knows how to deliver with his signature. And like I said earlier, run that tight ship of knowing who works well with him and going through the entire film, ensuring that, all right, I'm getting my message across, like you said, a deeper message in this case, and doing so where it's still engaging, where it's still something that could appeal to wider audiences, even if it didn't when it came out. And even to this day, in many ways, a lot of people aren't familiar with it.
Wow, and they need to get familiar with that one because Memento was the one that grabbed me. Like when I saw that one, I was like, wow. It's like to me kind of like similar to like I guess Quentin and Reservoir Dogs, maybe like Pulp Fiction in a way. But like it's just like one of those movies that I'm like, what? And you're right. It didn't. Probably the budget was very because it's basically like you know the same things repeating, and it's like in a motel room, and it's just like it's just an amazing way to tell a story backwards, and it's just like come on, man.
Or
like,
it's showing two different sides, and they converge at the end. One is in black and white, one is in color, and if you've seen the film, he uses a Polaroid. So to me, my favorite moment is the moment where he shakes it like a Polaroid picture, and basically, and it goes from black and white into color in that moment, converging both storylines. And to me, I literally get goosebumps just talking about it right now.
You know, you're not actually supposed to shake them Polaroid pictures.
Yes, I've heard that too. Even though it's in the song and everything, and
everybody does.
Everybody's gonna shake.
Exactly. Nobody wants to wait for that picture to develop. Come on now. Oh, now I want to get into The Prestige, because to me that's a movie that it took me multiple times to watch, not to appreciate, but just to see the deepness. Because if you guys know about how I am, where I love to read into movies and tell the twist early on, because to me it's more important to acknowledge what the filmmaker is choosing not to show you, and you have to read into that. And someone like Christopher Nolan is such a master that's why I read into it. That's it.
Although that he really works with subtlety when it comes to this film more than any other. You know, oftentimes people watch a film at the end, when that gotcha moment comes, they realize like, oh, how did I not see that coming? And, you know, he works very well with subtlety in that he is throwing those hints throughout, but they're not so overwhelming that You're knowing what's going to happen beforehand. And in many ways, it's not even about knowing what's coming. You know,
Exactly.
it's about that journey itself.
That's just an extra on it, because that's what I'm saying. It took me the fourth time to acknowledge spoilers. Well, at the end of the day, all these movies, they're going to be spoilers. They're old enough that should have no problem. But at the very end, it took me like the third time to realize that all of those tanks were dead bodies of Hugh Jackman, and Michael Caine's dialogue is literally talking about you don't acknowledge what you see right in front of your eyes. So to me, that's an incredible picture as well. You're gonna say?
Yeah. Oh nah, man. Like, you know, Prestige actually the same, like what you were saying. Like, but the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, this is a great movie. But like, you know, after watching it like 2 or 3 times, I'm like, what? This dude is killing himself constantly, like, you know what I'm saying, killing himself, and
just to match what Christian Bale is doing.
What Christian Bale's doing,
and he's wrong
just
about
like,
it the whole time.
And Christian Bale's just like, you know, that's my brother.
Exactly.
You know
that's
what I mean?
the
At
twist
the end
that
of the
I'm
day,
talking
like,
about.
yeah.
No, that's cool. No, we're saying spoilers,
Yeah.
but that's the twist I'm talking about, because you could see from the beginning that you're not seeing that character. It's almost like side angles. You never establish that shot, which to me, any great filmmaker clearly will establish a character. So to me, the fact it puts a little question mark in my mind once I see that we're not seeing a clear shot of that person. To me, that's where it leads into, who is this guy? Why is he so important to Christian Bale's character, even though we're not even acknowledging him, we're not seeing much of him? So to me, that opens a lot of doors in my mind. Sorry.
I don't know, and it's just crazy. Like, you know, it's like these guys are just brothers, and this guy goes all the way to look for some scientific crazy thing just to, like, you know, do the same thing that this guy was just doing.
When he didn't have to do all that.
As that, and it was like, at the end of the day, you know, I have a twin brother is always like that soap opera thing, but like he made it he made it so incredibly like done. Like, you know what I'm saying? The guy, his manager or whatever, he's always walking around with him. It was his lawyer, whatever, I forgot what he was, like, really.
Michael Caine?
No,
no.
Oh no, you're right. Sorry, yes, the other twin version.
Yeah, I forgot what he is to him. Is he his manager or something like that? I forgot what it was.
Like, they never clarify. It just seems like this is a close friend of his that he cares about, especially when he's buried alive, and it's this moment that you clearly are supposed. Sorry, if you want to go into.
No. That is really supposed to be that marker for the audience of, like you're saying, questioning, you know, who is this character really? You know, up until that point, he is in the background, and then here's this instance of, on Hugh Jackman's part, he's already keen to the fact that this guy means something to him, but he doesn't understand the depth of it, you know, actual blood here. But in that moment, you know, that's when the audience itself realizes that, oh yes, this character does mean something. We should be asking why and starting to try to figure that out.
And and nobody knew he was doing like an Andy Kaufman straight up and down for his bit. Like,
yes, of course,
for the art.
Of course,
you know what I'm saying? With his wife here and all.
And then
this,
even
like,
having to cut off their own finger because to match, it's just incredible. Yeah, but even that, what I love is that's another example, another great collaborator when it comes to acting with Christopher Nolan. Yes, with Christian Bale, because that was actually their second after doing Batman Begins. But now I want to talk about the Batman trilogy, which, to be honest, is one of my favorite trilogies of all time. To me, it's so complete. People can complain about the last part of it, but to me, it's its own beast, especially a character like Joker right here, Heath Ledger, who we know his performance was the ultimate.
And for many reasons, I think that Dark Knight in particular continues that trend of, you know, some of the reoccurring themes for Nolan. One of them being morality. You know, when you were speaking about Prestige a moment ago, it seemed like you were kind of shining Hugh Jackman in this negative light because we know what's going on in Christian Bale's side. Yeah. But there is this question of morality. What drives us? You know, what are our intentions behind everything? You know, that's introduced in Memento. That's then, you know, seen again in The Prestige. And then when we get to Dark Knight, not to skip Batman Begins, although I have thoughts about that movie, I think that that's really where we're driving home. Like, here are these two opposing forces and really seeing, okay, is there even motivation behind one of them? That's something that a lot of people have asked. And, you know, the answer to that we could speculate about. Sometimes the motivation is just chaos.
Very true. Well, to me, when it comes to that, definitely to me, just like you're saying, the moral issue, what I love in Dark Knight is that most people don't bring up the fact that, to me, Dark Knight gets biblical. To me, it is the story of Job being presented to you. It's this whole thing of you know, obviously Joker being chaos, being pure, being, you could say, the devil, and he's trying to prove to Batman, who you could say is God, that human nature is chaos. That just like in the story of Job, he talks about you know, they're only gonna have faith in you, and they're only gonna follow the rules as long as you give them a life where they feel comfortable and they feel happy with. But once you start taking things away, that nature of survival comes in. And especially with that movie, it's shown over and over just how much he sets the stage right in the beginning when it comes to, of course, the bank scene, just to show you how he knows greed is going to cause it. Even though he's the one telling them to kill each other, he knows that they're not going to hesitate to do it because they want that money for themselves. Now, I don't know if you have any...
No, I was going to say, like, I love Batman Begins as, like, an established... It was a
An
perfect
origin.
origin story, like, you know what I'm saying? It took you through the whole thing, like, you know? And, yeah. And it was, like, a long journey. It shows, like, how, you know, how he became who he became. And it was... I think it was, like, perfectly told, like, you know what I'm saying? At the end of the day. It was, like, it was a little slower. Well, I mean...
Every origin story is going to be slower
origin story is going to be a little slower, but it was a great one. I mean, it's still Dark Knight is still my favorite, but Batman Begins is definitely.
And you said you had certain things to say about Batman Begins.
Yes, I think that the major flaw in Batman Begins is very quickly remedied in Dark Knight in the casting of a very specific character. You know, unfortunately, Katie Holmes in Batman Begins is terribly miscast in that role. And that, for me, really brought down the film overall because she's such a pivotal character in terms of here is what we're connecting from Bruce Wayne as a child, to him becoming an adult. And again, when we're questioning, all right, motivations and, you know, Ra's al Ghul looming in the background, you know, just that conversation that that the two of them have, and she subsequently slaps him. I feel like that's a scene that could have held so much more power, but unfortunately, given that she's the one delivering it, it just really brought down the quality for me, and that's my biggest issue with the film itself.
So I completely understand. Now going into part 3, which to me is perfect because it follows the trilogy rule. That's actually why I really like Dark Knight Rises. To me, if you know in Scream when Jamie Kennedy is talking about the rules, it applies to other genres too, because he talks about in part 3. You always, in the trilogy, it always cuts back to the part 1 for you to find out that the story's deeper and is bigger than what you thought. Meaning, we did not acknowledge that there was a Talia al Ghul. So at the end of the day, it's just like when Ra's al Ghul shows up in the third one, he talks about, just like in the comic books, he's immortal, but his way of saying, I could be immortal in different ways. Obviously, giving life, having children, you live on forever. And to me, that was the dopest thing, where it basically brings back that rule of, what we've established, guess what? That's not the whole picture. And to me, that's ultimately one of my favorite things about that movie. Even though, of course, it does lack in certain things, but I would say, personally, I love the ending. I feel like it's the most complete ending of them all for me, of a trilogy, of a comic book story where it's the arc goes full circle. Now, I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Well, especially to me, it's funny because we were watching something like Interstellar, and half away is there, and I felt like the ending was very similar with Matthew McConaughey going back to her. It feels like this ending of, like, you know, leaving what he's known and journeying off to something new, you know, and it happens to be Anne Hathaway again. You know what I'm saying?
What I will say about Dark Knight Rises is I think it's a wonderful film overall. I think the only issue is that given that this is the final in the trilogy, in some ways it was a little bit too ambitious. And what I mean by that is here's the introduction of numerous major characters, where it's not necessarily that we're not getting enough of each of those characters, it's that the attempt to get more than enough for each of them and sometimes makes it feel a little bit overdrawn. However, I agree 100% in terms of the ending, that does bring it full circle, but it's just a little bit of that meat in between, you know, the paragraphs in the middle, that's
which I would agree with you said.
Like, it's funny, like, it did take me a while to finish watching Dark Knight Rises because of that, actually. It's, like, chaotic. So many things happening at the same time. Like, you know, like, it's like, it tries too much to, like, put you in different places. That's the thing that bothered me a little bit about Dark Knight Rises. And also, like, I don't know, his traveling, and it was just weird. Like, you know, certain things were a little off.
Yeah.
And it was just like,
Explain
and
to the
it
point
actually
that makes sense.
was, to me, I mean, because even though he made the trilogy his own, to me, Dark Knight Rises took more liberties than the other ones, like in a way, with the characters,
the
and
Lazarus
stuff like
pit
that.
and all these details that they
just
completely changed the interpretation of it. No, I completely
and
understand.
I kind of dislike those things about it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And one thing I would agree with, just like you're saying, the meat of it. That is the only. Every Christopher Nolan movie runs almost 2 hours, over 2 hours and a half. That is the only one where I feel like I could say 15 minutes less would have been okay. Matthew Modine's character didn't need to be in the movie. You know, I'm glad to see he was back. You know, he came back in a better way in Stranger Things, but I was glad to see him come back at that moment. But once I saw the movie, I was like, you know what? He could have stayed low for a while longer and come out with a different picture.
At the end of the day, didn't he just take the bomb and like go somewhere and drop it somewhere instead of like defusing it and doing all that?
Yeah, but that's the whole point where he needed to make himself seem like he was sacrificing himself so people could think that he died.
Oh, he died, yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Which there's a clue. What I love about that, people could complain, but Christopher Nolan knows how to put those little nuggets of telling you the story beforehand. He already talked about the autopilot system within the plane. So I mean, early on. So that's a clue to tell you where it's going to lead. And that's, again, that's what I love about him, even though that would be, at least in certain cases, one of his weaker films, especially the weaker of the
trilogy.
trilogy.
Robin, right, at the end?
Yes, and then
Joseph
Gordon-Levitt, and it happened to be that his middle name was Robin. So it's like, you can't really use that as your name because people just go, oh, I think it's, oh, his middle name, okay, that's him right there, it's Robin. So, I mean, I like the concept. I like how he tried to bring that in, that element in, but at the same time, it's like, And what I liked about the trilogy is the hermit in the part 3 is that hermit element of him being so gone for so long, but the problem is that it takes away from the rest of the world because guess what? Even in, we were talking about Dark Knight, Heath Ledger's last line is, we're destined to do this forever. And to me, that was meant to be that us as the audience, we could believe that we're gonna see, that world exists, even though we're never gonna see it. But part 3, The Dark Knight Rises, kind of kills that off because at the end of Dark Knight, he becomes a hermit and doesn't show up until 7 years later. Deals with Bane. And then again, the bomb goes off and he goes to live a secret life with Anne Hathaway. So it took away from the overall world. That's ultimately what bothered me.
The last thing I'll say about it, which kind of piggybacks off of both what you and Mario are saying, is, yeah, in a lot of ways, crazy as it is to say, I do think that this is the one that's least grounded in reality in terms of, you know, you really need to have the suspension of disbelief. Talking about the travel time, all of those things, those little elements, but even something like this where, you know, you're setting up something at the finale of one film, and then for obvious reasons, you know, unfortunately Heath Ledger's death, there probably were things that had to be reworked. You know, that changes what the third and final film looks like. But you would expect that second film, Heath Ledger, that would be the one where you're really having to think outside of the box. But actually, no, it's fairly grounded in reality. But then here, some of the choices, you know, stylistically that are made and story-wise that are made really take you outside of, okay, well, that really happened. And that's, again, I think that's because of wanting to be so ambitious. So that's where I'll end with that.
What would you say, Bane, about that movie yourself?
What would I say? You don't know. Is that my good thing? No,
no, he's good at Bane. I just wanted to hear one time.
Right
it's a little late. Okay, got you. No, it's still incredible. A little bit of Sean Connery, but So yeah. So jumping into one of my favorite, again, like I said, it's hard to pick the favorite, but let's talk about Inception. Now, to me, it's funny that I thought when we were talking about Insomnia, which I do believe it is his worst, I find it funny that one is about a man that can't sleep, and then now we're about to go into a movie about a man, about dreams, about diving into dreams within dreams within dreams. Now, Inception, to me, conceptually, it is one of those movies where, like you said earlier, it's something that you have to be prepared to like dive in and focus. Like, you can't be distracted at all. Like, I have a problem with people looking at their phones in movie theaters, but that's the movie where you go, even if you looked at your phone for 2 seconds, you're lost in this movie, guaranteed. So to me, that's why people could say the negative, but to me, that's the richness of the film, that it's so deep, it's so literally layered from dream to dream to dream. Now, To me, what can you say about that? I mean, sorry to put you on the spot, but
No, not at all. I mean, I struggle with you in that it's difficult to say this is the favorite.
No, of course.
But
that's why I said not one of them.
No, yes,
like I said, it's hard to pick.
But for me, watching it, I would say probably in my second or third viewing, I was very tempted to be like, all right, this one's at the top of the pyramid. You know, you can tell, unlike with other Nolan films, that this is his baby. He's already admitted the amount of time it took him to create, you know, this world and just everything behind it. But it shows in not only the storytelling, but also conceptually, just like how he brings these characters together and how everything is weaved. And I think, again, this is something that we bring back, that issue of morality and just a subjective experience where, you know, when you start thinking about the one small action, the large impact that can have, it really, it's very profound. And if you aren't looking closely, kind of bringing back a line from The Prestige, you will miss something because every single one of those details is paramount in understanding, again, motivations of characters, you know, what is it that's bringing them to the point where they are. Inception, for me, that's probably up until Interstellar, I would say, where I thought, this is the best collaboration between Nolan and Hans Zimmer. Yes.
Better though. So what did you think about Inception overall?
So I mean, like I said earlier, I watched Inception once, and actually I didn't lock in the way I should. Like, you know what I'm saying, like the movie is incredible, like visually, and the actors, everything is on point and on par, but like something about, like, I didn't lock in from the get, so it just like it went over my head a little bit, you know what I'm saying, but it was amazing. I realized was that, you know, a lot of movies afterwards have taken little things from it, like, you know what I'm saying, like Doctor Strange for one thing, like, you know, when they're running around and the world is folding, and that's really amazing, and just like the concept of a dream within a dream within a dream, you know what I'm saying, Rick and Morty did it. You know what I mean? Like, yo,
very true.
It's insane. But I think I'm gonna watch it again tomorrow.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I think I definitely have to watch it again tomorrow.
So you talk about that same thing, that the concept has been taken. If you guys don't know, X-Men First Class originally had a scene that was going to be like a dream sequence of them running up the walls and everything. They were in production, and then Inception came out, and they had to cut that entire scene out because they were like, okay, it's going to come off like we're copying, even though they kind of did it at the same time, you know, the writing-wise, not filming-wise. But to me, another detail that has to be said about Inception, just like we said about his endings, Inception to me is one of the greatest endings of all time. It's the type of movie where you could sit down and watch it 100 times and you keep walking away feeling differently. Is it a dream still? Or did he make it out? Once you see that, you know, the top spinning, I've literally shown it to different friends where it's like in that last frame you start to see it wobbles. And I go, you know what? It's real. Woo! And then the next time I see it, I go, no, he didn't make it out. So to me, that's it gives me goosebumps thinking about it every single time. So let's get into now a movie like Interstellar, where Interstellar to me was incredible. Matthew McConaughey, hey, all right. To me, so to me, yeah. I honestly was surprised that he was going away from like a Christian Bale. I thought that maybe he'll go that route, or again a Tom Hardy, where after 2 pictures. But to me, I was glad that he went with Matthew McConaughey, because to me he was perfect for this role. I mean, it's sad because I feel like this is a picture that people didn't really talk about that much afterwards. It was kind of like forgotten in the atmosphere. It just literally disappeared into space.
You know, it's funny. People I think have stumbled upon it, started stumbling upon it, because that's why, like, I didn't watch it right away, but then, like, you know, I've heard it, you know, like, actually I watched it in the airplane. Like, I watched it because I was like,
I don't think that's a movie
no, it's like, it was like across, you know, I was going to Italy or whatever, and it was like a long trip, and I was like, yo, Inception is here, let me watch this, and then I was like,
Interstellar,
I'm sorry, I said Inception, but Interstellar, I was like, oh my god, oh my god.
I got a few hours to kill. Let's put this on.
And it was like next level, like, to me. Like I felt like, you know, it's funny when I'm sorry that, like, you know what I'm saying, I started to, but like when he's in that, like in the whole black hole thing, and he's in that the dawn of, like, you know, existence, and like in the middle of that whole thing, it reminded me a little bit of Doctor Who, number one, but then it also reminded me of like one time that I had got taken my molar out, and they put me under, and I fell into this whole thing. And it was just like Inception. It was insane. Interstellar. I keep saying Inception. But you know the thing about Interstellar is that it's like perfect. It's like a few different movies at the same time. Like it felt like, you know, you have your whole like spaceship thing. You know, you're in the stars. You have the whole Earth thing. Yes, like, you know what I'm saying. Like, you know, you have to. They're fighting against this whole thing that, you know, the world is going to shit.
And I love the fact that it goes back, just like you're telling two stories, it goes back to Jessica Chastain being the older character, and from that point on, we're finally focusing back on Earth. I love that transition.
Yes, beautiful. I think I do love that scene as well. I was thinking when I watched it, because I watched it very recently, like, oh, he's in the sunken place, but in a good way.
Right? Very true.
But no, I love that, you know, this is again Nolan playing with ideas of time and causality, and just, you know, with that heart. You know, sometimes people that aren't fans of sci-fi or even fantasy, you know, they oftentimes make that argument of, okay, it's not grounded in reality, one, but also that it lacks that heart. And this is a film that, oh my God, has so much heart in it, and that is in large part thanks to Matthew McConaughey and his performance within it. And then that transition to then seeing Jessica Chastain and just seeing the impact that, you know, even for me, when we hear 23 years have passed, I'm not, you know, this is fictional. I'm not even related to this guy, and how much that hits me. Yes. And then we see the impact that it's had, you know, specifically on his daughter, on his son, who I do think is a more sympathetic character than some people would like to say. But it's just,
his son?
been, yes.
Okay, people talk about that?
Yeah.
Which there was that moment at the end when he punches out Topher Grace that I was like, whoa, okay. Wow. But it makes sense. Now it makes sense a little bit about the fact that he said he cut off his father, believing that he's dead. So to be honest, it's like he's being reborn in this new world and trying to exist here and survive. So at the end of the day, he feels like this is a threat to his family and his survival. So I completely understand that point of view, but it did come out of the blue to me, like, what?
This is all he has left, and he's fighting for it. You know, I think that's also a beautiful change in when we see the impact on these two children. You know, he believes in his father up until that point. His son dies, you know, obviously it's off screen. It's something that in that transmission, and that's when he decides, like, I need to put this to rest. And then we're seeing Jessica Chastain's character, who, you know, from pretty early on had already given up on her father. You know, you abandoned us, but is still on this idea of, like, we can still do something. We can still change this world. And then obviously when the acknowledgement that, oh no, my father is still here. He's the one sending me messages. I'm getting the goosebumps right now. Because that's beautiful right there.
Oh, because that, I mean, like, now, you're right. Now I see that character a little differently, like his brother. I mean, like his son.
The son, exactly.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's, what's his name?
Casey Affleck, Ben
Affleck. But, like, yeah, because now he's like, why am I gonna leave? The same way she was saying, like, these guys, where are they going? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's the same way that he's, like, just holding on to, where is he gonna go? Like, the world is about to end regardless. Like, you know what I'm saying? He's giving up because, whatever, like, but she's believing, you know what I'm saying? But it's...
And then talking about even there with a character, Michael Caine, which, to be honest, I feel like that was the most, not the unlikable, because you understand his point of view, but it was the one character that Michael Caine has played that betrays or at least disappoints ultimately.
For sure. But I think that the difference in that betrayal, you know, he's doing it for the right reasons. In that when we're looking at Matt Damon's character, you know, we see that here's someone who's saying, you know, it's like Walter White, I'm doing this for the family, but
exactly,
for me.
For himself,
he's saying, you know, even as
I gotta save the world, but he's doing it for survival. Yes. So how is it that doesn't coincide?
And he's walking away from poor Matthew McConaughey running out of air and making it seem like he's still the good guy. And I think that it was really easy for me to see that Maddie's a little shady here, because it ties back to an earlier scene when Anne Hathaway's talking about we're not going to see evil where we're going.
Yes.
You know, that's something that we're not.
Deep,
that's
yes.
you know, that's not going to be part of the new human experience. And then we
first thing they
introduce this
encounter.
guy, and it's like the
first
frozen
human.
tundra. I'm like,
That reminded me of Matt Damon in like House of Lies. Like he was like he played himself, but like as a dick.
Oh, I didn't
you know what I'm
see
saying?
Oh, I know.
But it was like
Okay,
the only
let's
other
check it
time
out.
that I've ever seen that, like him play, like, because it's like you know that he kind of went crazy.
Yes,
at a
of
point. Like, you know what I'm
course.
saying? Like something went off.
Isolated by
But it's
himself,
funny
all that
because
stuff.
he's not like super, like he's not like Joker crazy, or like like, you know, he doesn't seem like you can see it. Like he's just like, oh, still even walking
'Cause he
away,
keeps
like,
trying to
yo,
rationalize it to
I'm
himself.
still here with you. You can hear my voice. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? I don't.
Yeah,
Even if
don't
I was
worry,
dying,
I'm
I
doing
don't
this
wanna-
for you.
Yeah, even if I'm dying, I don't want to
Yes.
hear your voice. Be like, you just.
are you
like,
seeing their faces? I will say one last
Super
thing,
happy.
that in response to that you know what isolation does to people, because we're seeing that his isolation brings him to that brink of madness, and then we see that other character that his isolation breaks him in many ways.
Yes.
He's already a pretty sensitive guy, you know, he's the one who's bogged down in all that Dramamine, but that isolation breaks him in ways that
Yes.
it doesn't break Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, very true, very true.
wait,
And
what
what
are you talking about?
she's talking about the doctor that stays behind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
He ages for
that's
years and years
that's the
and years.
only thing that kind of bothered was that, like, he just died. Like, you know what I'm
yeah.
Oh
saying?
yeah, the way they ended
Yeah.
his character
He
seemed
kinda died. I
pointless,
was like,
and
yeah, it was kind of.
it didn't explain itself.
Because-
One thing I would say though about Matt Damon, when we were watching the film, like she said not too long ago, I said to myself, maybe this is why in The Martian we never saw him land on Earth, because maybe he went crazy just like that from being isolated for so long and killed them all,
Yeah.
including Jessica Chastain.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, he's a professor talking about survival, but not talking about he's a murderer. And then another detail that I realized, I was like, oh my God, I hate Matt Damon in this movie. I like him in everything. I'm talking about, I'm keeping in mind Talented Mr. Ripley, where he murders someone that he's obsessed with and takes over his life. And I still prefer him in that movie than this movie.
Because in that movie he wasn't a coward. In this one
Very
he's
true.
a straight up.
Ooh. And something else, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And something that you just made me realize by in that fact, an android, this robot, has more humanity than the actual human Matt Damon.
Yeah.
He's willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good, while Matt Damon is using the excuse that he is, but ultimately he's doing it for himself.
Tars is my dude.
Tars
Yeah,
is my
Tars
dude.
the man.
Yeah,
Damn.
but just keep
The
the comedy to
man.
65%. 65%. No, and it's beautiful that you brought up Get Out with the sunken place, because going back to why we're talking about this is overall Dunkirk, which has been nominated. I just read that Dunkirk and Get Out are the two pictures, you know, for best picture nominations, that it's the highest when it comes to gross of the year, which to me you wouldn't think of. Yeah, it's believable. I mean, in the overall sense, but to be honest, like, it's just incredible, because
Yes.
I love the fact that both have achieved this.
Yeah, and they're such different
Yeah,
films and the
totally.
messages.
Mhm.
You know,
Yes, completely.
if we're going back to Dunkirk, you know, as I mentioned earlier, that change in the cinematographer, which was first in Interstellar, you know, this is where
Yes, the shot.
I can't even find the words. It's such a spectacular film. You know, I think that when Mario was saying you're not in, you know, war movies aren't your thing, but this isn't like any other war movie, and I think that's the beauty of it. You know, we're so accustomed to seeing those behind the scenes, and I think in a lot of ways, you know, in certain films, that's what makes that film so strong, but in then others it can really bog down the film.
Yes.
You know, dialogue isn't always a great thing, and
Yeah,
the silence in this film is something that really brings together what the message for it is supposed to be. And we're just seeing these three different aspects of, you know, what this battle, what this war is doing to people: land, sea, and air. And I think that is something that Christopher Nolan accomplishes so well. I mean, he wrote this script, and, you know, I imagine he had to show and have that restraint, but he did it so wonderfully.
That's something that I didn't say earlier. Like, the way that Christopher Nolan presents a world, like, you know what I'm saying, a world to you, and he explains everything, like, you know what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be explained, like tell you anything. It could be it like it's explained within the cinema, like it's conveyed. Yeah, exactly. And like that's the one thing that makes this movie like stand out a little bit more, probably, is that it doesn't have dialogue. So it's like it's all direction and like all picture. It's all painting a picture mostly, like, you know what I'm saying, with no words and anything like that. So that I do understand like how that would make it.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, because war movies are its own genre in itself, because obviously in war movies you're not really getting an arc from a lot of characters, and ultimately and more than anything you're being thrown into a world and just shown these characters. You don't know what came before it, you don't know what came after these moments, you don't know where their lives are going to lead, but at the end of the day you're intrigued at what's going to happen in this moment, this living and breathing tragic just war where death and sadness and ultimately happiness at the end, but it takes a long time to get to that point. But the arc is really a story of basically blanketing all these characters of how they turn out, in the sense of like, do they survive, but you don't get to see them as individuals where they lead. You understand what I'm saying? So anything else you would want to say about Dunkirk?
The final thing I'll say about Dunkirk, kind of piggybacking off of you, is that I think that the battle, Dunkirk itself is the character of this film, and that's something that speaks volumes of, it's very difficult to accomplish that, where you're not looking to, at no point watching it was I asking really myself like, wait a minute, I want to know more about this guy. What they're showing you is all that you need.
Exactly, all you care about.
Yeah, because what it comes down to is what this battle means, what this point in time means for this war, and everything else is just, plays into that. It doesn't go the other way around. So.
And before we end, I mean, like, not to change it back to anything else, I just want to say, like, the one thing that I do come like to see and acknowledge from Christopher Nolan, what I was saying before, is like the whole world, is the fact that it's like was it Kirk Cameron that did Terminator and stuff like that? Or who wrote
James
Terminator?
Cameron?
James Cameron, yeah.
Kirk Cameron.
Growing
pains. Like no, but no, but like the way he establishes this whole like different way of thinking about time and space, or like, you know what I'm saying, and Inception with this whole
and he tries to make sure the science makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing.
And he relies so much on practical effects.
Yes.
Something that, in this day and age, you got the money, you want to spend it on those special effects, but he realizes, that no, if we could do it, let's do it, and that will up the quality, whereas a lot of people think that it's, that's going to make it dated and whatnot. No, that is what maintains that quality, and a lot of times elevates it.
Exactly. Just listen to how everybody responded to the new trilogy of Star Wars. Everybody was happy that it went back to practical. So trust me, I know what you mean. Even though most people subconsciously go, oh, that's dated. No, that's what we really want.
And it was funny that's exactly what I was thinking about. I was thinking about like Puppet Yoda when you said that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we're going back to like, practical stuff, like, and yeah.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. That's the end of this segment. All right. So we've reached the end to Not Till the Credits End. And I would want to thank my guest Christabel.
Hello.
And my brother Marielle for being guests tonight. And okay, let me do it again, sorry. So yeah, now we've come to the end till not to, okay. Boop, boop, boop. So yeah, now that we've reached the end of Not Till the Credits End, I would like to thank my guests, Christabel and my brother, Mariel, for joining me. But I especially want to thank you guys for tuning in. Now I want to hear your thoughts on what is your favorite movie of Christopher Nolan, and tell me your picks, who's going to win the Oscars. Leave those comments down below. Let me know. But for now, you could share, like, and subscribe. And you can check out my other reviews for the Academy Awards, plus a video to explain my whole new rating system right over here. But you know what? Till we meet again. Goodbye. I'll see you guys.